We are 8 days out. Democrats are desperately trying to make hay of this Paul Pelosi attack, and I put attack in quotation marks because there's so much uncertainty. We will discuss that. But we have got a loaded show, and I just want to let you know for this week on into the midterms, Tuesday of next week, we are trying to get as many guests on as we can who are in competitive races to allow them to make their final case to all of you in many different states all over the country. There is a lot of good news out there. I want to try to contextualize it all and make sure that we're letting you know where things are headed as we come down the home stretch here, 8 days away from the midterm. So let me start here. The House, the question, and let me start with this, Buck, and we keep reiterating it, but you all control the key, right? You have to show up. So there should be nothing that we say on this program that makes you less likely to vote. So if we say anything that is discouraging you from voting, we don't mean it. We apologize in advance. You should know that you control the key to all of these races and that you need to go and vote either early right now. I know many of you have already voted, or go vote on Tuesday. With that being said, the Senate is going to come down to 4 races. There's also some upside surprises that I'm going to talk about for a moment here, Buck. But Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania are the acknowledged battleground states. I believe there are solid trend lines that Republicans are going to win all 4 of these states. 2 out of those 4 will give Republicans the majority in the Senate. Would like to have a substantial majority. So those 4, okay? Everybody in those 4 in particular in the Senate, pay attention to them. Also, Buck, over the weekend, Tiffany Smiley, a couple of sterling poll results from her in Washington. I talked to a bunch of people over the weekend. They all said don't sleep on how good of a campaign Tiffany Smiley has run in Washington. There's a lot of nervousness among Democrats. They are pouring a lot more money into that race. That is legitimately a race that Republicans can win if the red wave is large enough. We're going to talk to Joe O'Dea here in a little bit in Colorado. He's also there. And we talked, I believe, on Friday, Buck, to General Baldock, who is making a real run in New Hampshire. That is the totality of the map. J.D. Vance is looking great in Ohio. Ron Johnson, who we're going to talk to later this week. I think we're going to talk to both these guys, looking great in Wisconsin. We are in a situation where basically in the Senate, the race is on tenterhooks in many of these different places. And I know you're excited as well. I'm sure you talk to a lot of people also. But there is the 8-day out overarching view of the Senate in general.
Yeah, we've got Tiffany Smiley coming on the show on Wednesday. We got J.D. Vance coming on Thursday, Ron Johnson Friday, because here's how we're viewing it. Clay and I have been talking about this. Some of these races, the trends are moving in the right line, in the right way, to be sure. But in some of these races, it is going to come down to the final push. It's going to come down to the turnout sentiment in the last few days, right up to, and depending on whether there's early voting or not, but right up to and on Election Day. And we want this to be a situation where we're counting the massive wins, not mourning a mediocre strong finish instead of what could have been, right? So we're pushing with everything we've got. I do think that what you saw over the weekend with the wall-to-wall coverage of the assault by a clearly deranged Berkeley hippie nudist on Nancy Pelosi's husband at 2 o'clock in the morning, the wall-to-wall coverage on this, and the explicit efforts from the media to try to tie this to Republican rhetoric. I mean, they're citing attack ads run against Nancy Pelosi in 2010. We all understand. Everyone listening to this understands they're reaching and they're desperate. But I think with a week to go before the election, they know now, Clay, that January 6th, the insurrection and abortion are not going to save them in the midterms. They should be, in at least these close races. They want to win Washington. They want to come out ahead in Pennsylvania, some of these other states. They should be focusing very much on issues and making a final case. Instead, they have this Hail Mary pass into the end zone of Republican violence is going to make people uncomfortable voting for them. Again, because a lunatic hippie nudist attacked Pelosi's husband. This has nothing to do with anything in the national political conversation for this midterm election right now, and they're desperately trying to make it just that.
I think you're 100% right on it. And if anything, I think this forces them to double down on a failed electoral strategy, which is January 6th and threats to our democracy is something that's going to motivate the electorate. Look, if you believe that, you are already a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat voter, and you already had made your mind up. If you are an independent voter, I don't even think people are paying attention to the Paul Pelosi story. Okay, I think they're busy. I think they're getting ready to take their kids out for Halloween. I think they noticed that the price of I mentioned this before, Buck, but the price of Halloween candy. You want to talk about something that people probably notice? I couldn't believe this. We talked about last week. Price of Halloween candy up 13% over last year. Twix are up 53% in their cost. Skittles, 41%, Buck. Reese's, this is from the Wall Street Journal. Reese's, 35%. I mean, this is crazy.
So just to be clear,
this is what people are noticing.
Everybody should be getting 3 Twix now, not 2, 3. Yeah. You're up 50% of the cost. You should be at the treble Twix rate at this point for your Halloween candy. But in Biden's America, I mean, Clay, what's next? 1 Reese's Piece instead of Reese's Pieces?
I mean, I always try to import the significance of taxes. This is something you'll look forward to when you become a dad, Buck. The dad tax is a real thing, and my kids know it. I just, every now and then, they're eating candy. Dad reaches over their shoulder and says, "Hey, dad tax." And it could be any food, it could be French fries, whatever it is.
I'm glad they're learning early about the unfairness of taxation.
Oh, yes. Dad's big government, and he just sweeps in every now and then. The dad tax just takes part of their candy, takes part of their French fries. And they're aghast. I'm like, hey, this is the real world. This is what you got to look forward to in America. You better support lower taxes. But the story here, I think even if you are someone who is movable still at this point, 8 days out, if you're that concerned about Paul Pelosi, you would also look around and say, wait a minute, I don't remember like multi-days of coverage of an actual assassination attempt on Brett Kavanaugh or everything being decided based on the crazy Bernie Sanders supporter who showed up and shot Steve Scalise. Look, violence is never the answer in any political realm. But the idea that Trump supporters are uniquely violent is just not supported by the actual data out there, to say nothing if you actually count the entire summer of riots. Republicans are far less violent as a group than Democrats would be when it comes to advocating for their political causes. But I think, Buck, it's just painting them into a corner, because instead of trying to come up with another message, they're left with, oh, look how dangerous it is, January 6th. I'm now kind of sitting around. Do you think that I wonder when they wake up on November 9th and we have seen a red wave and it may be a red tsunami, what are they going to actually say? I don't even know what their narrative is going to be on MSNBC and CNN, these places, the New York Times, the Washington Post, where overwhelmingly the American Republic is repudiating their narrative devices and stories. It really feels to me like the reckoning is here, and that we are really going to be able to finally take advantage of all the Democrat failures over the past 2 years.
Well, they've made self-correction and moderation and reason. They've made looking at what is happening and responding to it as a rational person effectively impossible within the Democrat Party. You are to do as the apparatus tells you. You are to go along with the machinery of January 6th and the insurrection is the most important threat in America today, or else. I mean, you look at this and you see that Democrats have made no real movement to walk away from, and when I say walk away, even just really to stop talking about that, it clearly doesn't resonate with voters. So to your question, what they're going to say, I can assure you it won't be that high crime and open borders and too much spending and authoritarian COVID anti-science are not things the Democrat Party needs to do soul searching over. It's going to be talk radio and Fox News and the other right-wing extremists out there managed to convince just enough people that, the insurrection doesn't matter, and so there's a threat to our democracy, and they will double down. That's what I see them going with, the same thing they've gone with until the presidential election the next time around. Because, Clay, this is the whole Biden regime is built on this. So it's fundamental for them. They can't change course willingly because it would be an admission that the whole Biden world we're in right now was a lie.
Well, first of all, I think you have more belief in their willingness to stay committed to their narrative. I actually think initially that will be the response. And then the real fallout will be somebody has to be blamed for this, and it's going to be Joe Biden, which is why I think by February or March of next year, he's going to get, they're going to trot him out there. He's going to stand in front of the teleprompter and read what the Democrat base is requiring, which is him not going to run again. You still think he's going to run, but I think this red tide is going to.
They're handing the presidency to the Republicans if they have the sitting president step down after a huge midterm election loss. Now, maybe they do that, but that is effectively what they're doing. Because I think that's what they're doing, I can't imagine they would ever do that under any circumstance.
See, I think they are going to look at the internals, acknowledge that Biden is becoming more decrepit and dementia-laden every single day, and they're going to create an internal party civil war, which I think is going to end.
And replace him with whom?
Newsom. Gavin Newsom's going to nominate.
Gavin Newsom has absolutely, just to be clear, zero shot in winning persuadable voters in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Georgia. No chance. He is this is like running Nancy Pelosi as the president, Clay.
I think they don't have good options. I think that we're going to get a swamping of an election in 24 if Republicans don't trip all over themselves, which Republicans have done before. But I don't think they're going to even try to trot out Biden. I understand your argument of, well, at least Biden has been elected before, and that Scranton Joe line.
The power of the incumbency. He is guaranteed. You and I both know this. He is guaranteed 47, 48% of the voting public. Right. It doesn't matter. It's the Fetterman effect. Doesn't matter how inept, how much he lacks leadership. He is guaranteed to that point. He's also guaranteed substantial support. I mean, the black community is going to vote. They support Joe Biden. Like, they're going to vote for Joe Biden irrespective of his performance in this midterm. I don't think they turn out for Gavin Newsom. I don't think that they'll have the enthusiasm for Gavin Newsom. Right? Gavin Newsom wasn't Obama's VP for 8 years.
Yeah, this is what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to have to find somebody to blame, and blaming the voters is even worse strategy, I think, than blaming Joe Biden, which is why they'll eventually settle on Biden.
I mean, they said that Russia, Clay, quick history, just as we're having this back and forth. They lost in 2016 when they thought they had a 97% chance of winning. And what did they settle on? Hey, maybe we should appeal to voters more. Russia stole the election and Republicans are racist. That was it. That was their takeaway.
And to be fair, that worked in 18, right? It did not work by 20.
They don't ever change. I mean, I think this is always we used to call it like mirror imaging in the CIA when you do analysis, particularly of an opponent. And if you start from the proposition that they are rational because you are rational, you may actually be missing the reality of their response.
There's certainly an argument that they're insane. I just think that they're going to. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. We also, Clay, we got a week here where we got to make sure let's come back and get into some of these specific races.
Lock in the wins. Yes.
Because we got to get these wins, buddy. Clay I'm telling you, he's high-stepping and he's 10 yards from the end zone, and I'm worried. That cornerback has got wheels.